brought a long pasuk that's totally extra. Rabbi
recite it.
Eliezer learns from it all different things. Each word is another halacha. And what we said is that Rabbi Akiva is going to learn from one of these words in this pasuk that a korban pesach can't be brought from Maisa. The Masnisa Tana, where there's a Bais and Shmei Rabbi Akiva, we're going to go through the pasuk. Zaysatayra chulu mincha. Very interesting, because the pasuk here starts with Eily. Rabbi Eliezer learned from an Eily that I need a knife. Rabbi Akiva also accepts that. So this Brisa is not going to go through each one, because some of them he accepts Rabbi Eliezer's interpretation. Ma mincha mekadsha bebalua, afkol mekadsha bebalua. Rabbi Akiva uses the mincha to teach me that if it gets absorbed in something else, that thing that it gets absorbed in, you have only one day and one night to eat that thing that it's absorbed in. If you remember, Rabbi Eliezer used chatas to teach me that. Rabbi Akiva uses mincha. V'itzrich lemichtav b'chatas, v'itzrich lemichtav b'mincha. Rabbi Akiva says, I need both chatas and mincha. Dikas of rachmana b'mincha, if it would only say mincha, b'shem d'rekicha bala, because it's soft. That's why maybe it can get entirely absorbed into another food. It's soft. It's could be a like a batter that could get absorbed. Aval chatas. But if you have a piece of meat, a malay, piece of meat is not getting absorbed into another food. V'ikas rachmana b'chatas, and if it would only say b'chatas, b'shem debasar agav deshamin kader. I could say that maybe because it's meat, chatas is meat, maybe the fats of it get absorbed into it much more. Aval mincha, but by a mincha, I know mincha has oil, but could be it doesn't have oil, it could be it has a very little oil. So a malay, maybe it won't get absorbed. So tzrich, I need both. Now the next thing is very interesting. Chatas, I have a word chatas. Ma chatas ein abalim and achulin ubiyayim ubiyadei hamanas. Avkol ein abalim and achulin ubiyayim ubiyadei hamanas. It says in the pasuk chatas. Just like a chatas only comes from mundane, it also only comes by day, and also you need the right hand. So to all sacrifices are only from mundane, not meiser. There needs to be by day and needs to be the right hand. Okay.
Didn't we learn so many times that you have to make let's say you were doing 5 comparison here and 4 comparison there, that there's certainly many decomparisons between a chatas and a shlam.
Right.
Why is he takes chatas and he carte blanche. He says, okay,
right.
Everybody's like chatas. There's
Right.
so many differences between chatas and other.
Right. I think the answer is that in those cases we had 2 things that we could compare it to. And we have something else that we don't know. We know here is like one extreme, and we know here is another extreme. The question is, which one do I compare it to? So we would add up. This is 5, and this is 4. This is, remember we had, this is a hedyot, this is kodesh. We had different things that even, okay. Here, it's something else. We have a pasuk that's totally not necessary. So we're taking a pasuk, those words, and we're trying to tell me that, well, I know clearly that there is a halacha there. And what the pasuk is saying is, Zois HaTorah. These are the laws for all of these sacrifices. That means that there's something that I need to get from each of these sacrifices that's teaching me about everything. So we're saying, well, I know that this is a law by a chatas. This must be the one that's applied.
Is this like a hekesh?
Yeah. Yeah, they call this a drasha. Yeah, this is a drasha that we're doing from the psukim.
But is it halacha l'Moshe Messina?
Yeah, these types of drashas are.
So
In other words, we can't do this on our own.
But I'm saying they're arguing all the way up,
Yeah.
saying which channel did Moshe say that?
Right.
Okay.
Right. It needs to come through with the
No,
Messiah.
or if Shesha says no arguing on the halacha l'Moshe
Yeah,
Messina.
I'm not sure. The term hekesh could be a specific type of drasha. This is an extra word.
This is not a hekesh?
I don't know. I don't know if it would go into that category. That's we were using this.
Hekesh that goes up to from the beginning. You don't just pick it out of your own mind.
That's right. We can't make it on our own.
So you have to make sure it's not on your own.
Right. The exception to this is the kal v'chaimer. That you can do on your own.
Okay, that's separate.
over there, the hekesh was, because it says, when you will come into the land of Israel,
Whatever you do this one.
right. So that was comparing it back to B'Chodesh Hazeh, to that month, the original Chodesh Hazeh of Mitzrayim. I think that's the pshat. Okay, Taisus points out over here that we just did a little trick that we usually don't do. Well, Rabbi Akiva claimed that I need mincha and I need chatas, both of them to teach me that something that gets absorbed because each one has a different type of absorption. A mincha is a batter, and the chatas is a piece of meat. And if I would have said one, I wouldn't have known the other. But then Rabbi Akiva went on, and he said, what do I learn from chatas? Learn from chatas that it can't be brought from meiser, it can't be brought by that it needs to be brought by day, and it needs to be used the right hand. Problem is, you just said that chatas is used to teach me about absorption. So Tosfos says, tarti darash. I don't know, it's always to me confusing. He says we're learning two things from chatas. It's confusing to me because so many times we say that, how can you learn this from this? I need it for something else. And here it doesn't seem to be a problem. Here it doesn't seem to be a problem. Okay. Now the Gemara asks, V'chatas gufa minolan. Where do I know that by a chatas I have these laws? Rav Chizda says, Damakra, we learn from a pasuk. V'hikr v'arnas parachatas asher loy. That Aaron brings the bull offering on Yom Kippur from his own. Mishaloi v'lei mishal meiser. It needs to be from his own money. He can't use meiser. He can't use the meiser sheni. How would he get meiser sheni? And I guess it doesn't matter, but whatever the case is, it needs to be his own money. Bayoim tzavasi nafka. No, Bayoim. The Gemara is asking that we know that it needs to be by day from another pasuk. It says Bayoim tzavasi, and the Gemara says that tells me that kabbanis need to be brought by day. The Gemara says, very interesting, kedin aspa. You see, sometimes when you're saying a new halacha, sometimes you could repeat other things just to go along with you just throw it in, but it wasn't really like a big chiddush here. We knew it from other places also. You know, let's say someone asks, what time shachris? You say 6:30, and mincha is at this, and we give them the whole thing. He says that I already knew. I know I wasn't asking it. They say, okay, I'm giving you the whole. So here, we're saying that it needs to be brought from chulin, and we also added in that it needs to be brought by day. But that's biyadi hayamanas midrabba barbachana nafka. Damar rabba barbachana amar ish lakish kol makom shnemer etzba kuneina el yamin. Why do you need to say that you need to use your right hand? We learn it from chatas. It says anywhere where it says, Rabbi Barbachana says, anywhere where it says the term kayin, it means you need to use the right hand. And by the sacrifices, it always says kayin. It always says kayin. So I don't need to learn from chatas that you need the right hand. The Gemara says kedin aspa. It said it just in not for any reason specifically that this is the real thing. It just brought it in because it fits with something that we know by chatas. Okay. It's funny though because we have two kedin aspas. Usually that would be just like one. You're learning three things. One of them could just be thrown in, but here we have only one thing that's really the chiddush, and then we have two. Like the bulk of it wasn't necessary, which is interesting. Asham, what do we learn from Asham? Ma Asham atzveisav mutarin, afkol atzveisav mutarin. We learn from the Asham that just like by the Asham, you can use the bones
for chulin.
For chulin, you can make bone china. So too, all other karbanis you can also use the bones.
Why? So this is.
I forget where I saw. Someone asked over here.
Also, or no?
Well, that's a good question. How would Rabbi Lezer know this? But we learned this before in Zvachim. But I saw someone asks, what about Eily?
It's brought
No, it doesn't become nicer. Oh, Afkal, even an Eily that's entirely burnt, you can still use the bones. That's what we learned.
The bones survive. The loose survives the mizbeach.
No, it means that it doesn't need to be put on the mizbeach. You can you put the meat on the mizbeach, and the bones you can use. You can make things out of them. But we're talking about only bones that don't have marrow. If it has marrow, then it's different.
So we learn Zvach.
We learned that's right. So, it says who. It says the word who in the pasuk when it's talking about burning the. In the who is an exception. It says only the meat is burnt, but not the bones. Okay. Rabbi Akiva. Okay, we got our answer already. So that we learned from Chatas that all sacrifices need to come from Chul, and you can't use meisers. Rabbi Akiva Hayvesavachta Pesach Mayav. See, this was interesting because the Mishnah said V'zavachta Pesach Tzaynu Bakar. You go back to the Mishnah. He said that what does it mean Tzaynu Bakar? Pesach only comes from Tzayn. Pesach doesn't come from a bull. You don't bring a bull. It's not bakar. It's not cattle. It only comes from sheep. So it says no. What it's coming to tell you is that just like a Pesach, which comes from sheep, needs to be from chul, and you can't use meiser. So too, a bakar. So too, cattle. All the other sacrifices which come from cattle as well also need to come from chulin. Now, that's if I don't know all other sacrifices need to come from chulin. What Rabbi Akiva did is he tells me chatas, teaches me to all other sacrifices. So yes, he's learning from one to the others, but he's learning from a chatas to all the others. He doesn't need v'zavach the Pesach tzaynu baka. He knows all sacrifices need to be chulin. So what is he going to do with the pasuk that the Mishnah quoted? So Mibayele to the Rav Nachman, he needs it for what Rav Nachman says. Dam Rav Nachman am Rabbi Baravua. Rav Nachman says the name of Rabbi Baravua is probably his father-in-law. Minai in Lamaiser Pesach. Shekarav Shlamim. How do we know that what's left over?
This is Rav Nachman Tana or Namaira?
No, this is it's Machlekes Rashi Taisus. Rav Nachman by Yaakov was his name. He's Namaira.
Because Rav Nachman Tana, his father was Rav Gamliel.
No, 1 second. I'm not familiar with the Tana Rav Nachman.
The one who said that he's Mashiach. He's going Ana Mashiach.
That's a Tana?
Rav Gamliel?
No, but how do you know he's a Rabbi Gamliel's son-in-law?
Marsha said. Hassan of the Benesiah.
Oh, no. Son of Benesiah. Benesiah means...
No, it says Rav Gamliel. It says the
can't
word
be.
Rav Gamliel. Oh, we'll look
okay,
after.
but no, but the Benesiah, this is probably this Rav Nachman. And Rabbi Baravul was associated with the Reish Galusa. With the Reish Galusa, which is the exilarch in Bavel,
Okay.
which also comes from Yehuda. There was this politics.
Okay.
Two Davidic families. So Rabbi Baravua was a very important, very connected to the Reish Galusa, and some of the people think that Rav Nachman's wife Yalta was possibly his daughter. That's what I read. Okay, he says, "Minayin lamaisar Pesach shekarav shlamim." How do you know that if you have leftover Pesach offerings that you bring it as a shlamim? Shenamar, it says in the pasuk, "V'zavach the Pesach Lashem Alikecha tzaynu bakar." You slaughter the Pesach to Hashem your God, sheep and cattle. Cattle. You can't bring a bull. Cattle means a bull. You can't bring a bull for a carbon Pesach. It only comes from sheep and goats. But we're not talking about the carbon Pesach. We're talking about the Meiser Pesach. What's left over from a carbon Pesach. as what we'll see, what it means left over. But if you have an extra Korban Pesach that's left over, so you can bring it as something that's brought from sheep and cattle, and that is a shlamim. Shlamim. V'hami hachanafka. You learn it from Zavachta Pesach. Midavur the Shmuel nafka. I know it from a different source that an extra Pesach is brought as a shlamim from Shmuel's father. Well, there's very interesting stories about Shmuel's father. The Ksiv. It's possible that he traveled far distances, like in one night, like magically, miraculously. The Ksiv, as it says, it says, this is a whole interesting thing over here. It starts off with the first pasuk was, one second, let me get the first pasuk. It says, first it's saying, it says lezevach shlamim is extra. So Amar Avod Shmuel Davar Abba Menachem Yel lezevach shlamim. Something that comes from sheep, which that's referring to a Korban Pesach, could be brought as a shlamim. So that means that I don't need the source of Zavachta Pesach. I have another source from Avod Shmuel. Now the Gemara says, Vakati mehacha nafka mehasam nafka. You think you're learning it from here? We already have two sources for it. We have a third source. The Tanya, the Bais says, Keves l'Rabbi says a Pesach la'alya. Kishwaimer im keves l'havi Pesach shavar shnasai. What happens is that it says im keves umakriv. The pasuk says vim menatzen karban al zevach shlam. If a person brings from sheep a korban shlamim, the following pasuk says if tzayin is it's not specifically sheep. Tzayin is just cattle, not cattle. How do you say it? Tzayin means flock. The flock, which is the smaller animals. Then it goes on to say specifically. The next pasuk says if it's a sheep, and later on it's going to say if it's a goat. Now, when it says tzayin, automatically it includes sheep and goats. Now, it didn't need to say the next pasuk if it's a sheep, because later on it says if it's a goat. So I know tzayin would be sheep, and later on it would be goats. So the fact that it says that extra word sheep, that's coming to teach me something. L'Rabbi sa Pesach la'alya. It's coming to teach me that the Korban Pesach, that if you bring a sheep, that the tail of the sheep is brought on the altar as well. There's a fat tail, the alya. That's the famous Gemara with Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, where he told the convert, he told the non-Jew that was faking it. He was faking and trying to get at the Kiddush and the Korban Pesach. He said, ask them for the fat tail. So it's supposed to be burnt on the altar. Because Shuaimer im keves, when the pasuk says im keves, lahavi Pesach shavar shnasai, it's coming to include a Pesach that the year passed by. Pesach needs to be brought in its first year. Ushlamim habar machmas Pesach, l'chol mitzvahs shlamim. It's coming to tell me that if there is a shlamim that comes because of Pesach, there's two interpretations what this means. One interpretation is that it means shalmei chagiga, the extra or animals that are brought because of the Korban Pesach. It's coming to be included that they have all the halachas of a shlamim.
So that's not Moisar Pesach?
Or it's Meiser Pesach. Those are the two interpretations. What does that mean? Shiyatinu smicha unasachim, that it should have, you should lean on it, and you need to have the other things that come along. You have to wave the chest and the leg. Okay. From
here you learn the bakar?
We're asking, why do you need im zevach, that Meiser Pesach? The Pesach, why do you need that? We know it from Avur the Shmuel. Why do you need both of those? We know it from Im Keves, that Meiser Pesach is brought as a shlamim.
But didn't we?
Shlamim haba machmas Pesach would include the Meiser Pesach.
But aren't we teaching here the chiddush that you could bring a bakar?
That was the first pasuk. and we're saying, why do you need that? The first pasuk told me that Meiser Pesach is brought as a shlamim. How do you know shlamim? Because of bakar.
So the chiddush here is that you can bring it from bakar. We already
No,
know.
a shlamim could be brought from bakar. We're discussing.
We're talking about Meiser Pesach.
Meiser Pesach.
That's the chiddush.
Right, and we're asking, why do we need the first pasuk, the second pasuk, the third pasuk is all telling me the same thing.
So where do we learn bakar from here?
Oh, because it's telling me that you bring it as a shlamim. Shlamim automatically we know could be bakar. This is the fact that it's shlamim. The im is, that's the pasuk afterwards. Right.
So once you say shlamim, then you know
No, it's for bakar. It's a hifzika inyan. Liman al eish ain't tuna aliyah. It's coming to tell me that if you bring a goat, it doesn't need the fat tail. Can I finish till the end? I'm running late.
Go for it.
So the Gemara answers Tlasakroik Siv. Yes, we have 3 psukim. Chad la'aver zmanei v'aver shnasei. First pasuk tells me if Pesach passed and the year passed, you bring the carbon Pesach as a shlamim. It used to be a Pesach, but the time passed. It's not Erev Pesach anymore, and it's not the right age. It needs to be within the first year. It's already over. One pasuk tells me that if it's not Erev Pesach anymore, however, it's still in its first year, that you bring it as a shlamim. It's Erev Pesach, and it's the right time, but it's an extra carbon Pesach. Why? Because he lost his carbon Pesach, so he designated another one. Then he finds the first one, and he has an extra Pesach here. That even then you bring it as a shlamim. Utzrichi, and I need all of them. The Yashmin Navers Mani Vaver Shnasi would say it was not the right time and it's not the right age. Mishum Di Itchile Lagamri. It's not a carbon Pesach. You bring it as a shlamim. It's totally not in the right situation. Avalavers Man Vaver Shnasi. But if it's still in the right year, but it's just not Erev Pesach, the Chasila Pesach Sheni, you can bring it for Pesach Sheni. Emalai. I would say it's not a shlamim. You just use it for Pesach Sheni. You have to, but I say no. If you say that it's past the time, but it's still in the right year, but if it's still appropriate for the time now, because it's still Erev Pesach, I would say that you can't bring it as a shlamim because it's still a carbon Pesach. Tzricha needs to tell me that you bring it as a shlamim. And Kol Kabbanas Tzibra will do.